Good afternoon and welcome to the Indie Office Hours. Today our guest is Deltina Hay and she is going to help us understand microblogging. Charlotte is still out of town. She will be back next week and she will see us through next week's topic. The show today is going to be pretty interesting because I had never really heard the term micromedia before and how it's used to power content. So it was a new thing for me. I understood the reasons for it and everything, but I think you'll really find this interesting. Deltina has deltinau.com, and that is a project that she has where she helps you learn different aspects of social media. And then she's also the board chair for Independent Book Publishers Association, IBPA. And Deltina, could you explain about yourself just a little bit more?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Laura. And I've been in publishing for about 10 years. My background is pretty diverse. It goes anywhere from accounting to applied mathematics to psychology. But in the past 7 years, I've written a number of books on social media, the mobile web, search optimization, and really find that mostly what I do now is teach on the topics. And, I'm a programmer, as well as a marketer, and so I teach a lot about the tools. And that's really what I'm focusing on now. I used to do a lot of consulting for businesses, but now I'm just really enjoying teaching and being a grandma.
I'm a grandma too, and that is enjoyable. Well, I'd like to know, first of all, can you just give us a broad overview of micromedia, and then we'll discuss how it can be used in your writing and publishing business?
Sure. What I consider micromedia is sharing small bits of content, whether it is a short excerpt of text or an image or a video or a link, resource, or even a quote. Beyond that, the sharing itself, the other thing that I like to stress is that to make the content that you produce, say, on your own website or wherever you produce them and publish the content, also very shareable, as far as making it easy for other people to share those little bits of micromedia from your site. And so it's not as much about the creating new places to share as it is about creating a larger audience or reaching a larger audience, because micromedia allows you to go out and post to some sites that ordinarily you may not have posted to, and to reach an audience that you may not have reached in the past.
Do you find that it's helpful with like the I guess I could say smaller social media sites, just like Instagram and things like that? Do you find it helps develop those a little more? Because that's a piece that I am certainly missing. I mean, I do well with, of course, Google+, but Twitter and Pinterest, but the Instagram, and there was another one I was looking into, but those smaller pieces I certainly miss.
Yeah, I think that thinking in terms of micromedia and sharing these smaller bits of content really does help you kind of get your head around Instagram. I encourage people first to start with content that they already have. We might talk about that in a minute. But as far as thinking small, and this is one of the questions that I posed to the IBPA panel that I taught at the last PubU, and I posted a link to the slides, I believe, on the page to that, so people can take a look at the slides from that presentation. But as far as really thinking about what you can do and say an Instagram video, like 15 seconds or 6 seconds, and creating contests for maybe reviews in 15 seconds, so people can do video reviews, and whether or not you can explain or do a book trailer in 15 seconds. They used to say in the old days that if you can explain your business in 10 seconds, with your elevator pitch, then you needed to work on it. So this is a good exercise in that. But also it's about real time, and whether or not things like sharing images real time and Instagram really is relevant to what you're doing. if you're out there doing a lot of presentations or events and book signings and that sort of thing, then you really need to be embracing Instagram and really taking advantage of that real time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, and I think that I don't know if it's because it's so new or if it's just my circle of friends don't use it much, but that's a piece I'm missing that I have to develop. Would you also suggest like taking quotes out of that content, like making those memes with them as part of the
Yeah,
way to do content?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, like I said, is not to really think of micromedia necessarily as having to create brand new content. Let's say you have a blog post and you have some really good quotes or lines within that blog post. If you take that and you create, say, like a Tumblr account or a WordPress.com account. Now, notice that I say WordPress.com. I'm not talking about your own hosted website on WordPress.org, but WordPress.com, which is turned into what Tumblr was originally, which is called a Tumblr, okay, where it really is kind of a constant streaming of shorter bits of content, be it a quote or an image or a video or just any sort of a small excerpt or whatever that you can take from your existing content, and that's actually what those platforms are there for. And so save that really beefy, optimized content for your website, and then take little bits of it and go out to these other micromedia sites to share them.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about using WordPress.org like that before.
Or WordPress.com.
I mean .com. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's hard.
Exactly
It's hard for people to. Yeah, some people don't even realize there's a difference. Oh, wait, what's WordPress.com? Well, the really nice thing about WordPress.com and Tumblr is that they're actually communities within themselves. So they're communities of bloggers. And so you actually can get exposure to people who never would have stumbled upon your website, through using, those other micro-publishing areas.
Yeah, that's interesting because I have a WordPress.com site. That's when I was telling the green room that I don't do anything with anymore. So I'll just start using that again and then repurpose that content back out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
See, I'm learning something as we go. One of my favorite things to do is learn things.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I really want to stress, and I want to make certain that I say, before we get off on any other topic, is that you really want to be prepared, really when you're posting any kind of topic online or publishing content online, is especially as far as, number one, do your keyword research before you do any kind of major campaign.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
When you go, like you use the Google AdWords tool, and you gather up like your 20 very best keywords, and they're long tail keywords, the things that don't have a lot of competition out there, that are applicable to your content, your book, your product, whatever. And you have those keywords that you're using every time you go out there to all of these different micromedia sites, whenever you put content on your website, whenever you put descriptions for your books and Amazon and so on and so forth. And then the other way that you want to make certain that you're prepared is that Pinterest is another great micro media site that I consider micromedia, because it's pretty easy to pin an image, right? It's a little bit of content. But you want to make certain that when you create a Pinterest account, that you create a business account and that you link it to your website. Because then you can use this great tool called Rich Pins, where you can mark up the content on your website so that when people pin things from your website, then there's actually is going to be a link within that pin or within that image that goes back to your site. And so being prepared means that whatever you're putting up there, whatever bit of micromedia you're putting up there, is always going to be able to come back to your content somehow.
I would think too, since obviously this would take some time and effort on your part, which none of us have enough of, right? So I would think that it would be really important too to sit down, like you said, when you do your keywording research, is really nail down what your purpose is. and what you're trying to do, so that everything is streamlined and you're not getting a
Absolutely.
scattered information out there. So if you're trying to promote one particular project, make sure everything has a connection to that, because that I know a lot of people have trouble with social media because of that. They have trouble defining what they're trying to do, and they think of it as a social site instead of a business, a vehicle for your business. So I think that that's really important. But I agree with that keywording research. A lot of people shy away from those things. They think that only the techies and the digital marketers have access to those tools, but those are free tools that you can use, and it's not hard to learn them. Read a couple of blog posts about them, and you honestly get enough information that you can use them, well enough in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the tools are free, and really knowing how to apply them, you don't need to know too many details. You just need to be able to gather up as much information about your book or whatever, and create a web page for it, and then have Google AdWords tool come and look at that content and make some suggestions. Then you can start your list from there. And then, yeah, absolutely agree, and so glad you brought that up about knowing what your goals are. And that's part of what I teach as far as strategy. That's the very first thing you need to do. Some people just say, okay, now I got to go out on social media, I'll just start throwing stuff out there. But you really need to slow down and say, okay, what are my goals? Do I want to sell books? Do I want to establish myself as a thought leader? Do I want to drive traffic to my website? All of the above, so that whatever you're doing, you know that your efforts are being applied to what your ultimate goals are, and that those goals are measurable. And so the same thing with going out to these smaller places, these smaller micromedia sites. Again, if you're always making certain that you are coming back to your website, then you can measure that. You can use Google Analytics or whatever to see, oh wow, I'm getting this many hits from WordPress.com. This is great. Or people are coming back from this particular infographic pin that I shared back to my website. So you really know what's working, instead of just going out there blind.
Well, I've said many a times on the Writing Biz and also on this show to use Pinterest as a research tool for your writing projects. And that's another place, is in that research, that you could repurpose content out for the projects that you're trying to market at that time. Little statistics or blurbs or quotes by other people. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could use there. So I think it would be I think that it would be well worth the time to sit back and look at what you have available to you now and decide what you can redevelop into something else. It's really, really smart, a time-saving way to do it.
Yeah, it really. Oh, yeah, it really is. One of the examples I use in the presentation I did for PubU is I talk about infographics, and I'm going from exactly what you were just talking about, gathering that content and making it into an infographic, but doing it with a lot of intentionality. So if you create an infographic where you have, like the example I use is I did one for my mobile book that had like 7 slides, and each slide really represented a section of the book, but it was rich with like statistics and how-to graphics and such. And that you take those and you create this infographic, and there's tons of things that you can do with infographics, lots of micromedia ways that you can put it up there on all these different sites. SlideShare now has its own section for infographics. And then you can take that graphic and even break it down. Then now you have 7 different pieces. Each one of them can be a topic for a blog post. You can actually take those 7 pieces and do a little screen, SlideShare with it as far as video. You make a little video out of it, make it into your book trailer, and post it. Make little shorter videos, what I like to call snippets videos. Share them on Instagram and Vine and most places. So there's a great opportunity there to really think about all of the content you have, how you can create perhaps an infographic with it with all these great graphics, and then ultimately use those for tons of content down the line.
Yeah, that's smart. That's really smart. I think that, and also too, as publishers could do a link sharing marketing thing among their authors to put together a bunch of that micromedia for each one, and everybody share each other's links and push out that content. And that would be a good way to get everybody involved within that publishing platform, and it creates more interest. So, yeah, that's really smart. Good stuff. Good stuff. What would you say if I decide, okay, I really need to do this? What's kind of the process that I could go through? What should I be doing first before? And what can you name some tools, like maybe some video editing tools or graphic tools that can help me out a little bit?
Well, I would say if the very first thing that I would do in any case is to look at the content that you already have, and also look at your website, because like I said early on, if you want to make certain that you make your content very easy for people to share, and so because some very interesting statistics are out there about how most people don't read an entire article before they share it. So they'll read maybe the first couple of paragraphs. It's like, oh, this is interesting, I'll share it, and I'm off to something else, right? And so to make certain that on your blogs that you have compelling information in your very first couple of paragraphs, and that you have share buttons that are easy for people to share your content, and that you also have things like tweetable quotes, and you use tools like click to tweet was one of my favorite tools, within blog posts, to make certain that people can share your micro media content very easily, with their followers. And then I would say take a look at that content and figure out, what's the best of it, and to pull out those juicy bits, as I like to call them, and share them on these other, micromedia sites. And that includes your images, that includes quotes, that includes factoids and links, as well as again, making certain that you're prepared and that you have a verified website on Pinterest, that you're a YouTube partner if you're using YouTube, and then go out, because again, you've got things that are trackable that people can come back to your website from. And because I don't think that you need, especially for writers and for book publishers, I don't think they need to produce a whole lot more content. But if you do find yourself in a position where you don't have a lot, or you don't know how to create something like an infographic, then one great tool is called Visually. That's visual.ly. Okay. And then also using one of my favorite video screencasting tools is Camtasia by TechSmith. Very easy video editing software that isn't too feature-rich, so that it makes it a little bit more user-friendly for those of us who aren't actual video producers.
Right. There was something else that when you were talking to, I was thinking, I know that a lot of times, my background's graphic design, so I have all the graphic design programs. But one program that I rely on a lot is PicMonkey. It's just a free photo editing software. I actually get the premium version, but it's a free photo editing software that you can just pull up in your browser and throw together a graphic if you need to real quick, and it makes it so much easier instead of having to open the big program and go through all that. So there's a lot of tools out there that can do that. Of course, you have to be careful. I mean, you have to be careful what images you use and make sure that, they're not restricted by copyrights and things like that, or create your own image. But a lot of times you can create your own image just with, a picture of random clouds and the text and change the colors or the look of it a little bit, and you have an image. It's not necessarily that you have to find the perfect image of the little boy eating an ice cream cone on a beach, I mean.
Yeah. You can get sucked into iStock photo or Graphic River for hours looking for just the right image. And that's where it becomes time consuming. You and I were talking in the green room about how it seems that our most popular content is stuff that we just threw together, and didn't overthink. Whereas these well thought out blog posts that are mapped out and 1,400 words or just totally flop. So you never really know what's going to hit out there. And so, try different things.
And doing this the micromedia way would, of course, drive content back to your website and the blog post or the book or whatever you're trying to market at that time. But it would do it in a faster, more shareable way that people are more likely to look at that content, I would think, than if just the content, especially something that's serious or highly technical, than they would if they just saw that there. I think that it would really help.
Yeah, right. Which is why things like memes, image memes, and that sort of thing tend to get really popular because they're easy to share.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. It's just very visual. You can see it in, a couple nanoseconds and share it.
Well, I used as an example a while ago in a discussion I was having with somebody about, I read a lot of nonfiction books, books like yours, and I read through them so fast because really in a nonfiction book that's explaining something, probably 20-25% of the content is something that's really valuable. The rest is kind of setting you up for the content, the fluff that you need to, make it a book. And I think that I've been trying to apply that to my social media actions and remember to bring it down to what that actual content is. And this micromedia is a very effective way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for those of us who write very concisely, it's definitely advantageous. And people who, I think one of the problems when we talk about, social media and producing the types of things we're talking about here is we tend to think in terms of nonfiction. And one of the things that I like to stress when I talk about things like infographics is that they really are applicable to fiction. Because if you look at an infographic, what a great storytelling tool.
Oh, sure. If you were doing a story on, let's say, that was based in Italy in the 1600s, you could do a whole infographic on the history or the what they ate at that time, how they dressed. I mean, there's just the landscape, anything. It's an absolute wonderful tool, and you're right. I think it's underutilized for that. I think it could go a step further.
Yeah. So I'd really encourage authors, fiction authors, to think about how you can utilize these, otherwise rather techie tools, as storytelling, vehicles.
Right. Charlotte and I both use Kathleen Colvin as an example all the time about that. She writes books that are based in past Roman history, and she does blog posts and little things about not only the history but how the women dressed, the different jobs they did, all different kinds of things. And she's using the micromedia very well to do that.
Right, and so those factoids are also really fun things to share and great things to share on things like Tumblr, especially if you can find a relevant image, like a vintage image or something to go along with it. And the other place that I like to stress when I talk about micromedia are Q&A sites like Quora.com, and that would be a great place for any type of author to go in and kind of search around and poke around and answer questions that may have not already been answered. And it's also a great place to find topics to write about, blog posts. If people are asking a lot of questions about something and not a whole lot of people are answering those questions, it might be a good place for you to have a blog post and then go back and answer the questions along with a link to your post.
That's a very good tip. Yeah, that's absolutely a good tip. I hadn't thought of that. That would be a good way to get an understanding of that, where the holes are. Cool.
Right.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm learning still more. We're about at the end here. I want to remind everybody that next week, I have to look at my card, we are going to do the secret to getting good book reviews. Charlotte will be back. I will not be here next week, so y'all get a break from me. And that's the 26th, and the guest is going to be Lindsay Parker. And that's going to be a very interesting show that I know a lot of indie publishers and authors will be interested in. And Lindsay Parker will give you a lot of information on that. If you have a chance, watch The Writing Biz Wednesday at 7:30 here on Google+, and you can also see it over on YouTube as a replay. And it's on a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And this week we have Jeff C. He's going to talk about Pinterest and other social media platforms, and it's the end show for the a series on social media for writers. And Deltina, would you like to tell us what you have coming up, where people can find you, and what we can look forward to?
Well, right now, deltinau.com is the best place to find out what I have going on. I just produced or put together a what I call a mastery of digital marketing certificate on my site as well. I have over 20 courses, anywhere from the basics of Twitter all the way through search optimization, and pretty much all of those courses are included in the mastery program. But for those who don't want something quite that in depth, you can take individual courses as well.
That's good. It's good you offer it like that, because a lot of times people find themselves, but like I was saying with the Instagram, you may want to just learn about one thing, and that's nice to have that available instead of having the whole ball of wax. So that's good. That's good. I'll use that as a resource on my show and my blog post for the writing biz too, because I think that the writers over there can get a lot of information from that. Well, I certainly appreciate you being here today, Deltina. It was very nice meeting you. And to everybody who's watching, join us again next week when Charlotte will talk about book reviews with you. And I hope everybody has a great week. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.